to get a player that you think is going to be with Luka for X amount of years, can you do that with the pieces they have without giving up Austin Reeves?
I think so. I think the challenge with that for Rob, and maybe he's going to have to take some more opposing GMs out for coffee, I don't know. But the challenge for Rob is he showed his hand. He showed exactly what he was willing to give up to get their big of the future and what they thought they were getting in Mark Williams. So teams know that's the starting point. And teams also recognize how desperate the Lakers are to get a big. And so they're going to try to drive the price up. Fortunately, I think the market, there's a decent number of bigs that are going to be available. There's a few stopgap options that are out there in free agency as well. I think if the Lakers suddenly have the starting center job open to free agents, they're not able to get the guy on the trade market. They become the most attractive landing spot for any of these veteran bigs. So I do think that Rob's not in the worst position negotiating wise, but he has already showed his hand. I do think they can get somebody, though. I think they can get that guy. Finding somebody, though, that can be a lob threat, that can be a rim protector as well. It's not going to be necessarily an easy task, but I think they'll be able to get that done without including Austin Reeves. Now, of course, if you want to get into like Jaren Jackson Jr., Bam Adebayo, and I'm not saying the Lakers can't get these guys, but you got to be willing to part with Austin Reeves to get to that level. But when we're talking like the Nic Claxtons of the world, if it's you go back to the Mavs and you're talking Daniel Gafford or someone along those lines. I don't even know if Walker Kessler is a thing. Anybody sounds like he's probably not. But if we're talking like Mitchell Robinson with the Knicks, we're talking Goga Bitadze with the Orlando Magic, any of these kind of guys, yeah, you should be able to get a player of that caliber without including Austin Reeves. I'll tell you, I know the Lakers would not include Austin Reeves to get any of those guys. So I think they can accomplish it without moving Reeves, as long as they're not trying to get that like all-star tier big man.
There's levels. Yeah. And that's the best way to put it. And I think, I did a video, I think it was last week, where I'm like, listen, I heard the names, Jarrett Allen, Nic Claxton, you mentioned Gafford. Cool. All those players sound like they'd be great fits for the Lakers. I'm not giving up Austin Reeves. Basically, the biggest trade piece that I have for one of those guys. Now, if you start talking about different types of players that, like you mentioned, the Bam Adebayos, Jaren Jackson Jr., and again, we don't know if these guys would even be available, then that's a different conversation. That's a real conversation that you understand, what would be at stake if you want to get that caliber of a player. What do you make of Nickeil Alexander-Walker? And I'm asking specifically him because that's a name that, we were talking about how certain teams are going to have to make decisions and get rid of certain guys and then rely on some of their younger players that they just drafted to kind of work through the system. That's probably going to happen in Minnesota. They'll probably pay Julius Randle. I'm sure Naz Reid they want. I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker could potentially become available because of that. And there'll be a few teams that have interest in him. What do you think of him as an option for the Lakers? And I know that's not a big, that's not a center, but that is somebody that certainly the Lakers can use from a wing perspective.
Yeah, no, I mean, like when you look at, Chris Finch, the coach of the Wolves, has already said that he thinks they're going to bring all these guys back. They're going to figure it out. That's what he's supposed to say, though. Looking at the math, it's going to be very, very difficult for the Wolves to keep all three of them and not be a second apron team. And most teams do act as though that second apron, even if it's not actually triggered as a hard cap, they act as though it is a de facto hard cap. They do not want to pass that line, and rightfully so. So I think the Wolves have some tough decisions coming here. For Nickeil Alexander-Walker to the Lakers, it makes a lot of sense, particularly if, let's say you are able to, let's just throw out the name Nic Claxton. Let's say they decide Nic Claxton is their guy for the future. All right, you give up, Gabe, Maxi Kleber. I don't know, maybe it's a Rui-based deal, whatever, expiring money. You get Nic Claxton. It's probably Dalton Connect, draft capital, whatever it is to get him. You go get him via trade. All right, now you've checked that center box via trade. Now that $5.6 million taxpayer mid-level exception that the Lakers will likely have access to, that becomes your main weapon in now adding somebody via free agency. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker would be a phenomenal target. The challenge being that there's already rumors out there about teams that may be willing to give up a full mid-level, that $14.1 million. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, we're talking about nearly 3 times what the Lakers can pay, that they're not going to be able to get into the mix. But, Alan, there's a lot of teams that are now going to take, that have access to the full mid-level, that are not going to spend it. Because now you can use the mid-level exception under the new CBA as a trade exception. So they have reason to hold on to it, go into the season with that mid-level exception and say, we're going to use this at the trade deadline to absorb a contract. So I don't think the sheer number of teams that have access to the full mid-level necessarily means the Lakers are going to get outbid, as my studio Stu makes his presence felt here. he's coming in here to hang out. But I don't think that necessarily means the Lakers aren't going to get anybody. But I think if anybody does come along, the Orlando Magic have already been mentioned as a team that might do it. If anybody offers him that $14.1 million, that's it. I think the Lakers are out. If Nickeil Alexander-Walker doesn't get that offer, though, he makes a lot of sense for the Lakers, as long as they have already checked that box of finding a center. And that would be, I think, a hell of an offseason. If you get, it's a Nic Claxton or whoever, Jakob Poeltl, whoever we want to say it is at the 5, plus Alexander Walker with your mid-level, your taxpayer mid-level, that would be a really solid offseason, I think, for the Lakers. I like him a lot as a target, a guy who can defend multiple positions, knock down the 3. I think that would be a great result for the Lakers if they could get him. But we'll see. I could see a team talking themselves into going full mid-level for him.
All right, thank you very much for watching the clip. Just want to give a shout out here to one of our partners, the Wallace Firm. They are official injury attorney of the Sliwa Show and Hoops Talk, the entire channel. If you are ever in a need, and I hope you're not, but some type of serious injury with yourself or a family member of yours, I would like to personally help you by introducing you to the best in the business, Brad Wallace and the Wallace Firm. Also got a URL out here that you can use as well. Just go to wallacewins.com/Sliwa. Thank you for their partnership, and thank you for being a part of the Sliwa Show.